Marilyn Monroe may have suffered a tragic death on August 5th, 1962, but today she's been brought back to life here at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. So join me as we attempt to uncover the actual truth of what happened to one of Hollywood's most revered actresses of her day, the one, the only, Marilyn Monroe. Welcome everybody to the Frameworks YouTube channel. My name's Eric, and today I'm going to be visiting the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, where they have on display the life, death, and legacy of Marilyn Monroe. And there we have the Peterson Museum right across the street. I elected to park right behind Johnny's Coffee Shop and Restaurant, which has been seen in many different movies. It's a filming location and quite a hot spot for many different vloggers. So now that we've made it through our quick security checkpoint, we purchased our tickets and got our wristbands, we're gonna head to the third floor where the exhibit actually starts. And now starting off with a brief history of her childhood, she was actually born Norma Jean Mortensen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, on June 1st, 1926. It actually coincides with the opening of the exhibit here at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures because it opened up June 1st, 2026. But her childhood would have been riddled with tragedy. She was bouncing from foster home to foster home. She didn't really know who her dad was, and her mom had a lot of mental illness. She was living in poverty. She would have later been betrothed by a man by the name of James Dougherty. I don't know if I'm saying that right either. When he was 21 years old and she was only 16, and it says that the marriage was arranged by her guardian to prevent her from being sent back to an orphanage. Which it also says when Dougherty was deployed with the Merchant Marines during World War II, Norma Jean took a job inspecting parachutes and spraying fuselage at the Radio Plane Company munitions factory. And I'm just reading a little backstory. So it says here in 1944, an Army photographer, David Conover, visited the factory that she was working at to take a morale-boosting photo of women contributing to the war effort. He was struck by her vibrant charm and photographic potential. This encounter led her to quit her factory job and sign with a modeling agency, quickly becoming a highly successful pinup model. Later on, her modeling success caught the attention of movie executives in 1946. She divorced Dougherty, again I can't say that name, her first husband, to pursue her career. She then signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox, dyed her hair blonde, and legally changed her name, which launched her journey into becoming the global icon that we all know today, Marilyn Monroe. Upon entering the exhibit, you were greeted with a full red carpet experience, glamorous lights, iconic movie posters, videos, and pictures taken of Marilyn Monroe throughout her life. They even have some personal belongings that were once scattered throughout Marilyn's personal home. If you get a chance to experience this exhibit, you should definitely jump at the opportunity. However, this exhibit is but a mere snapshot into the life, death, and legacy of Marilyn Monroe herself. The essence of her life story and legacy of her career will forever have to be remembered and fully appreciated by those who know her best: her friends, her family, and her long-lost lovers. Walking through this exhibit, I was filled with joy, genuine curiosity, and a heartfelt tragedy for Marilyn herself. I found myself in awe in all the movies she found herself being a part of, sad because of the heartfelt, tragic childhood and celebrity career that no one else paid much attention to because they were too busy being distracted by the aura that came with being such a famous celebrity. I also felt very curious about so many things in her life. How did Marilyn herself feel about her life and success? Did the world ever see the true Marilyn Monroe, otherwise known as Norma Jean? And will we ever get down to the bottom of what happened that night she mysteriously passed away? Which brings me here to the Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park and Mortuary to see if we can find some answers about Marilyn Monroe's mysterious death. Now it's interesting because adding to the Hollywood legend that is Marilyn Monroe, there are a few notable people that are buried next to her and actually directly above her. Now right next to her is most known as Hugh Hefner, Playboy bunny entrepreneur that he was. But more interestingly enough, directly above Marilyn Monroe is a guy by the name Richard Honcher. And what's interesting about him is his grave, his last wish, one of his last wishes was to be buried directly facing down, facing Marilyn Monroe's casket. And I find it super interesting because one of his last wishes to his own wife was to be buried face down so that he could face Marilyn Monroe's grave. Which I think is kind of ironic, but also just adds to the story and the mystery that is Marilyn Monroe, because Marilyn Monroe was buried there. Later on, Hugh Hefner was like, I want to be buried right next to her. And then obviously after Marilyn Monroe had passed away, because Hugh Hefner passed away in 2017 or something like that, the other guy in the 80s was like, you know, I want to face down right above her when I'm buried. And I don't really know what to make of that, because I after going through her exhibit and learning so much about her, you kind of just come to understand that this woman just wants to live happy and a peaceful life. And even in death, she is surrounded by people of the likes of Hugh Hefner and Richard Poncher. But there's Marilyn Monroe, laid to rest in the Pierce Brothers Westwood Cemetery in Los Angeles, California. And I've been sitting here for a little while. I've kind of been walking around, and fans have come and gone, just came and showed their appreciation and moved on. But I find it fascinating that even in death, you have two men that just couldn't help themselves and wanted to be next to Marilyn so bad that they were buried there, buried right next to her. And you know, there had to be some sort of obsession from this guy, because I read online that Richard Poncher actually purchased this crypt from Joe DiMaggio, one of Marilyn Monroe's late husbands. So I'm sure after the split, he was reluctant to get rid of this and probably got it for a good price. But I just find it so fascinating that this dude wanted to be face down to face Marilyn, when Marilyn, after she passed away, just like anybody else, just wants to be laid to rest. Rest in peace, Marilyn. Most notable is you see a lot of lipstick on her grave, and people come and leave little trinkets. You have flowers, you have little cards. And this is one of the things that they gave us, which is actually kind of smart. Someone actually kissed the little card that they got from the exhibit instead of kissing the actual cement. So actually that's pretty smart. But even 100 years later, about every 5 minutes or so, you get some sort of fan or curious person that just wants to get a piece of Marilyn Monroe. So what was it about her that everybody was so obsessed with? Was it her good looks? Was it her acting ability? Was it just that they wanted to be her fame, fortune? What was it? And what is this cloud that surrounds her death? How did she actually die? It's something I'm actually dying to know, and I want to get to the bottom of. Now, her death has been attributed to an overdose, which she regularly did use pharmaceutical drugs. She was drinking, she was using pills all the time. So is an overdose completely out of the question? No, it's not. But after watching a few different documentaries and doing a fair amount of research, there's some missing gaps in the timeline of her death. And there's even question on whether she was even removed and then placed back at her house on the night of her death. There's a lot of questions surrounding this, which a lot of people have investigated. And I think that, to be honest, will we ever find the answer? I have no idea, because she was so famous, so involved with people in politics, the Kennedys, for example. She was very revered by so many different people, but at the same time, there would have been plenty of motivation to keep her death quiet or a mystery. Because at that time she was, hanging around the Kennedys at the height of their power. She was also associated with different political parties, which ended up clashing with certain political powers of the day. So there was kind of a lot going on around Marilyn that was kind of out of her control, because at the end of the day, she kind of just was a celebrity. And she's even kind of, and I'll butcher the quote, she's even quoted in saying that if I am famous, it's because the people made me famous. So none of this really was brought on by herself, although she did want to pursue an acting career. She was kind of constantly thrown into the limelight and around a lot of people that just wanted a piece of her. So my question is, what do we do with that? What do we do with the fact that Marilyn Monroe, formerly known as Norma Jean, was just a child who was born into this world of parents who, one, couldn't take care of her, and two, pretty much didn't want her. She bounced around from foster home to foster home. I heard as many 11 foster homes by the time she was 16. And then she was betrothed into this marriage that she probably didn't even really want to be in, but she also just probably didn't want to be a foster kid anymore. And I don't understand the legality aspects of that. That always kind of was interesting to me, because the man she married at the time was in his early 20s and she was 16. And it was kind of an arranged marriage type thing. And then, he goes off to war, and she goes off and does this modeling career, and then gets into acting, and then redefines her character. And then she goes from Norma Jean to Marilyn Monroe, which catapults her into stardom and fame. And now everybody wants a piece of her, and everyone just wants anything that they can get from her. But at the end of the day, as you look around, what did she want? That's the question that I'm asking myself, is what did she want? Because there are tidbits of interviews and little things here, and she just kind of wanted a peaceful, quiet family life. I think she wanted to be a mother. She wanted to be an actress. Did she want all the fame and fortune? I know she was on quote saying she didn't really care about the money so much because she had enough of it. But what really made her brain tick? And then what would motivate someone so brutally, if it was nefarious? Because that's the two working theories. Is one, it was a complete accident, she was just partying and she was just wasting away, and she was just, probably just took one too many pills that night and blah, blah, blah. How celebrity overdoses happen. They usually have some sort of drug dealer bringing them the stuff. And, would it have been hard for the Kennedys to have one of their people slip in some unknown pill into the drugs that one of her people would have bought? Totally possible. How did it happen? Why did it happen? I think there's a lot of motivation from people like the Kennedys and to kind of keep her quiet, but it's just kind of unfortunate because we lost such a young talent. She was only 36 years old when she died and never got to live out the rest of her life, was really just passed around for, and the interesting thing is a lot of her movies that she was casted in, there was many that she had to say no because she was tired of doing the same role over and over and over. So I could understand where her drug use comes from. I could understand, why maybe she wanted to end it all. I don't know the answer to that, but there's just such a cloud of mystery in this person. And yet, despite that, 100 years later, she's pretty much just as influential today as she ever has been. Like I said, every 5 minutes, someone's coming by her grave. Oh, where's Marilyn Monroe's grave? Where's her grave? Where's her grave? People come, they leave little things, and then they take a picture, and then they move on. But everybody knows her. Everybody knows the legend that is Marilyn Monroe. But while I was at the exhibit, too, I happened to kind of look over, and there was just like this young woman just staring at this dress, and you can just see in her eyes the desire, it was like a little kid seeing their role model for the first time. And what the woman was looking at was a replica of a dress that Marilyn wore. It wasn't even a dress that she wore. There was a whole room of dresses and outfits that she wore. But this particular dress was the one where she stands over the grate, and you know, the air blows up and she's like pushing it down. Now they had a replica at the exhibit that I was just at, and even in a replica fashion, people can't get enough. They just can't get enough. It's just mind-blowing to me. And if you ever want to come and visit Marilyn Monroe's grave, just to take a look for yourself, it's very interesting. So right over here, this gray building right here is the parking lot. You come down the street, pull in the parking lot, get your little car, park. You walk out the gate, make a right of the parking structure, and then you walk down this road, and then you walk all the way down, and her grave is right in this corner. So if you ever want to come down and take a look, definitely do it. It's definitely impactful, I understand, but I think it's so interesting because even though we're just looking at a square in the wall, it's like Marilyn Monroe, the Marilyn Monroe. It's her square. And at the end of the day, it's her story. Another fun little fact is this plaque right here has actually been replaced before. The exhibit has one of the original plaques. I don't know if it's the original, but I know this is at least the second or maybe even third plaque that they've had to replace on here for reasons I don't fully understand, but one of the original plaques they actually had in the exhibit. So when you come here, obviously the stone's going to be original, the location's original, the story's obviously original, but this is actually a replacement plaque. Still, I mean, it's staying here, it's permanent, it's there forever now until they decide to replace it again. But they had one of the original plaques in the exhibit at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. So if you want to see the original plaque, definitely go to that exhibit. But obviously, plaque or no plaque, seeing the actual grave is, I mean, it's impactful. It's definitely breathtaking. Made my way down the street just a little bit to one of our last locations of the day, and I'll only spend a couple minutes here just because people actually still live here. But I just wanted to show you the last location that Marilyn Monroe lived and ultimately passed away. It's actually kind of surreal because as you come down here, you can kind of see, you know, the Spanish style design and all of the cameras. So you know you're in the right place when you have camera, don't trespass. So I'll do my best to stay out in the middle here so I don't bother anybody. But, you know, I'm actually kind of overcome with emotions because just over this fence, through that gate, this would have been the gate to her driveway, gate right into the house. And somewhere in that house, I can't really tell where from this point of view, but somewhere in that house would have been the bedroom that she was found, presumed to be dead. Well, cameras and security guards monitor this property. Gotcha. And later, officially presumed dead. But there's some nefarious action that presumably took place because there's a timeline mix-up in that night that doesn't quite add up. Just a few last looks at the property. Again, I don't want to go too close. People still live here, and this is actually owned, I was kind of looking it up there, it's actually owned by a company that basically owns a lot of other celebrity properties. So I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate a lot of people trying to get access to it. But it is owned and operated by a company, and to my knowledge, no one has lived in this property since, you know, which is quite interesting. I kind of wish it would be open for like tours or something. But unfortunately, the end of a cul-de-sac is all we get. And I'm sure that kind of knowing the area, knowing the history, many of the neighbors are familiar with this by now. But generally when I go to like a famous historical or, you know, kind of just historical site of any kind, especially if it's in a neighborhood, I only like to stay a couple of minutes, kind of get a taste, look, and then keep it moving. Now, first impressions of being out here, it is in a nice, quiet, literal dead-end street. It's kind of a weird street because it's down an alley, but there's like houses in front of it. So like the only way you could have gone back there would be by going down this alley. It's a very tight way, very private, in fact, which in a way makes a lot of sense because, you know, at the height of Marilyn Monroe's fame, she probably would have wanted something a little bit more quiet and quaint and just a nice place to live. But as you get up here, you notice the amount of security. They got ring cameras, security cameras, signs everywhere, and you're in somebody's neighborhood, which is why I like to kind of come down here, take a nice little peek, you know, just have my moment, look around, take a look, and then just keep it moving. You know, you never want to spend too much time in a neighborhood like this because people actually live here. And, you know, if one person ruins it, it's going to ruin it for everybody. So if you do come down here, definitely, you know, be respectful, be peaceful, don't ruin anything. Just come, take a look, and then keep it moving, just like the rest of us. But first impressions, I was definitely overwhelmed. I actually felt something. Like I felt like a weight, like a weightness. Like it was heavy. I mean, it really was. And I'm not one of those fanatics. I find it interesting. I find, you know, her story interesting, her legacy interesting, the fandom, you know, all the things. I find that all very interesting. I don't have a personal connection to someone like Marilyn Monroe because I didn't grow up watching her. I just kind of always knew her as like a Hollywood staple and a character at Universal Studios, you know? So for me, the connection to a lot of the outfits in, say, the museum or the exhibit, you know, I probably would have been like, wow, that's the actual dress of the one where she's standing over the grate, but they had a replica in there today, so that was kind of disappointing, to be honest. But when I came, so I didn't really have much of a connection other than like, wow, that's her stuff. She actually wore it or used it or owned it. That's very interesting. Some of the personal belongings were probably in this house as well. I saw some chairs and some like pottery, you know, some glasses and things like that, artwork. So a lot of that probably would have been scattered throughout this house, in fact, you know, but you know, like I said, I don't have a really big connection, but what I can say is even though I walked down to the end of this alley, I was very overcome with, I mean, a little bit of fear, I think, because on one hand, you're walking up to a property that's owned by a large corporation and they got all kinds of security and they're not playing around, right? You're in a neighborhood, whatever. But I'm also kind of like saddened in thinking that like, wow, it was not a very large place. It was very, you know, I didn't get to obviously go inside. I'm sure it's a decently sized home, but you know, I think when we think of the magnitude that is Marilyn Monroe, and to know that's where she spent her last days, it's sad and in a way kind of peaceful because it's so quiet and quaint and it was just hers. I think it's exactly what she wanted. The style that she wanted, you know, in a city that that adored her anyway, whether she loved the city as much as it adored her, you know, it was kind of a nice, I think I'm happy to see it be in such a nice neighborhood, but it's always interesting seeing things in person because it never, I don't want to say it doesn't match up to the hype because I think it does, but it is also smaller than what you think in person. If that makes any sense. But very interesting, very overwhelming knowing that we saw her grave, which is right down the street. We saw the exhibit, did a whole ton of research. I've been really connected to this story for a little while, and to know that this is the location that she spent her last night, her last days here, I think is very impactful. Taking one last look. Right down there is where Marilyn Monroe spent her last days. Pretty incredible. $348. And I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but the house we just passed was O.J. Simpson's. Now, to my knowledge, after said event, the house has since been knocked down, but the location of where it happened is still here. So I noticed it was right around the corner, and I wanted to do a quick drive-by, but I could already see security freaking out. They're probably going to turn around and come and yell at me. But I just wanted to do a quick drive-by and kind of go, that's the location. Holy crap. Here is part of the entrance. And we're just going to round. I didn't realize that it was on a corner. But to my knowledge, O.J. Simpson, little Google search right through that gate. That says 380. Where's 360? Oh, shit. Sorry, that was his house, O.J. Simpson's former Brentwood estate. 360 North Rockingham Avenue was demolished in 1998 by the owner who purchased it and foreclosed the property. Meanwhile, Nicole Brown Simpson's former condominium, where the 1994 murders occurred, still stands at 879 South Bundy Drive. So let's go over there. So that's the back side of the house. I don't remember where the murders would have taken place, but we're coming back around. We'll get the front. Looks like I can park across the street. So I'm trying to line up the investigation photos, but I pulled over here on the side and I found the tree, the light pole, and then the drain. So as you can see on the left-hand side, there is a large tree and a light pole. And then right down below there is a drain. So the walkway would have been just in line with the tree. So it's actually not this. There's a walkway right here just on the other side of the light pole. It wouldn't have been that one. There's these trees right here. Right in here is where the walkway would have been. But it's all overgrown with foliage and bushes, but you can still match up the tree, the light pole, and the drain. So as you can see, he's still matching up the same tile. So here is one of the walkways. And the other walkway would have been right here. It would have been right through there. Actually, it might have been this one. It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. There's a lot of plants. Yeah, it would have been that second walkway, because that actually lines up. If those bushes weren't there, it lines up pretty well. And like I said, there's the tree, the light pole, and the drain. Wild. And understandably, the current owners have allowed the current bushes to be overgrown because, as I'm sure many people in this neighborhood would want to do, they want to go on living their lives and forget that this tragic event ever happened. But unlike the shroud that covers Marilyn Monroe's mysterious death, on whether it was an overdose or nefarious, despite that shroud of mystery, as far as O.J. Simpson goes, we all know who did it. Made my way down over to Hollywood Boulevard in front of the Roosevelt Hotel, where the first Academy Awards took place. It was only a 15-minute ceremony, but it's also a hotel where places like Charlie Chaplin and Marilyn Monroe would have stayed many times. Marilyn Monroe also has her fingerprints, her handprints, I should say, in front of the Chinese Theater. Currently it's blocked off right now, so we won't be able to go over there. Here's a better look of the Chinese Theater, where many notable celebrities have placed their handprints in front of, Marilyn Monroe being one of them. But like I said, unfortunately, Unfortunately, it's gated off right now, so we're not able to go over and check it out. They're probably gonna set up a preview for another movie, so we'll have to come back and check that out. Here's a picture of Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell, forever cementing their hands in history, no pun intended. And even 100 years later, Marilyn Monroe is still a prominent figure on Hollywood Boulevard at the intersection of Hollywood and Highland. Marilyn Monroe received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame February 8th, 1960, and she was among the original honorees to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Very cool. It's also directly across the street from what used to be the National Bank. And at one point in time, this was actually the tallest building in Los Angeles, built in 1927. Her star is also located right in front of a McDonald's and right next to the Ripley's, believe it or not, building, believe it or not. Here's actually one of the only pictures I could find of Marilyn Monroe in front of the star, technically behind it, but actually in the same location. She got it in 1960, so that would have been 2 years before she passed away. And here it is, sitting here on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And oh boy, has this place changed since the time of Marilyn Monroe. Lot more buildings, a lot more people, a lot more craziness at night. But there's still a ton of rich history down here if you want to go find it. Well, that'll about wrap it up today. Had a good little journey. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I learned a few things, and I hope you did as well. Thanks for tagging along. I'll see you in the next video. You can expect a lot more videos. Historic videos, historic sites. I'm gonna try to do some more planning, pre-planning, instead of just winging it every time, so you can expect that. But if you've lasted this long, thanks for tagging along. I appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great rest of your night. Nipsey Hussle? Dude. I better get home before my wife kills me, so. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Bye-bye.